到美国了，过来了。好，儿子，到美国了。来。
Okay, so Eric Adams is cutting off money for illegal immigrants. He's slashing the funding and kicking them out of the housing and everything. But before we get into that, let's focus a little bit more on these Chinese nationals, these Chinese illegal immigrants. So there's been a lot of noise about the massive influx, over 200,000 illegal immigrants hitting New York City. But we don't hear a lot, we don't hear too much about the Chinese people in these groups. So we got people from Haiti, people from Africa, West Africa, and obviously most of them are from Latin America, mainly Mexico and Venezuela. But what we often see trickled into these big caravans of illegal immigrants coming into the country are Chinese nationals. There's been a lot of talk about the US's rivalry with China and about Chinese spies. We had a congressman, Eric Swalwell, he was sleeping with a Chinese spy. He's on the intelligence committee and he was pillow talking with a Chinese spy. But we got a lot of them, tens of thousands of them, who have come into the country, and most of them go to New York and California because that's where a lot of Chinatown, a well-established Chinese populations are already centered. And most of these Chinese nationals who come into the country illegally, unlike the Latinos and unlike the Africans, they don't need the government's help because their own people take care of them. So we're going to look at this article. We're going to read a little bit about what's been going on here. We're going to skip down a little bit because this article gives a whole lot of fluff and backstory as to what exactly is going on. So we just need to get to the parts that are more relevant. But let's look at this picture here real quick. So this is a Chinese illegal immigrant. He was going through the Darien Gap, a place that Eric Adams allegedly is claiming that he's going to visit, but that's a different video. I'll talk about that in a different video. But he's going through the Darien Gap. Apparently they fly. They don't need a visa or anything. They can fly directly from China to Ecuador, I believe. And they go from Ecuador to Colombia to Panama and on to the border. And this guy, he said, yeah, I came all the way from China. I flew to Thailand. I flew to Turkey. Then I ended up in Ecuador. And from Ecuador, I just walked. That's a long ass walk too. I just walked from Ecuador all the way to the U.S. border. Golly. And when he got to the U.S. border, guess what happened? Border Patrol let him in. They just ran a catch and release operation on him. Allegedly took down his information. He could have told them his name was anything, but they caught him and released him into the country. So let's read a little bit about what's going on here. We got the Chinese nationals, these Chinese illegal immigrants in New York City. And like I said, they don't need the government handouts because their own people, the Chinese people who live there, take care of them. And here he is right here. Said he was on a caravan. He was part of a caravan coming up to the U.S. and one of the Latinos thought he was cussing him out in Chinese. Somebody was cussing him out in Chinese, so they kicked the Chinese people out of the caravan. But all right, Mr. Wang eventually crossed into California, where he said he was briefly detained by border authorities. When he was released, he continued on to Flushing, arriving in December. So Flushing, that's this area in New York. That's this place in Chinatown. There's a massive Chinese population there, and they paid very cheap rent. Look at it. He paid $12 a night for a bunk in an apartment shared with other Chinese immigrants. So they know all these Chinese illegal immigrants are coming in. They said, look, y'all don't need to go to the government. Y'all come over here. You can pay a very low amount of rent. We got restaurants. We got hotels. We got all types of work that we can get you into right away. Don't worry about the language barrier because, look, we all speak Mandarin and whatever. And we're going to make sure that you get on your feet and you don't have to sit there begging the government for handouts. The Chinese migrants have largely stayed out of New York City's shelters. Fewer than 400 of the more than 173,000 migrants passing through the city shelter systems since spring 22 have reported coming from China, according to officials. That's not saying that not many Chinese nationals are coming. That's saying that when the Chinese nationals come, they don't go to the government. They don't go to Eric Adams saying, oh, please give us free food. Oh, please give us some food that is culturally appropriate to us. Help us, give us handouts, give our kids places. They don't ask for all of that. They don't ask for free rent, anything like that. That's for the Latinos and for the Africans. They're the ones over there going halfway across the world just to be homeless in New York. looks like the Chinese, they got a different plan. They're like, look, we don't need the government. We're going to go there and meet up with the Chinese people who are already there. And they're going to make sure that we get on our feet. They're going to help us out. They're going to charge us very low rent when we get there. They're going to set us up for some work right away. The Chinese newcomers did not need to rely on the shelters because they could turn to ethnic enclaves, which are home to many of the city's 411,000 Chinese immigrants. Such enclaves have long played a key part in helping Chinese immigrants integrate into New York and other cities, according to Professor Guest of Baruch College. So it's giving some historical information right here about just how many of them. You got a couple of guys here, very low rent. They're probably paying $10 a night to stay here, and like I said, they're going to be fed, they're going to be given clothes, and they're going to be given some type of job working under the table, maybe at a Chinese restaurant, Chinese bodega, Chinese hotel. They're going to be doing something right away pretty quickly. Already the Chinese migrants have helped replenish the city's population following losses during the coronavirus pandemic, blah blah blah. So basically they're trying to say that it's been so many of them. You had all these people fleeing New York because they're draconian and COVID-19 laws, but so many illegal immigrants have come to New York that is replenished the population. And these people, they're being set up. They even have a state senator who's Korean. They have a lot of Asians in the government who can help push funding directly to the Asian communities. So here's an example of a place right here. So these illegal immigrants, they fly across the world, then walk all the way up, and they're set up. They're set up pretty quickly to get on their feet. And I imagine 10 years from now, these people who came from China, they're going to be in a much better financial situation than the Africans and the Latinos, because this community has come together to take care of their own. So I just wonder what would happen if a Latino African went over there to the Chinese place. Hey, look, can I get in one of these cheap rooms? Can I get one of these jobs at one of y'all bodegas or something? Nope. Asians only, probably, but I don't know. So it's saying that the Chinese immigrants, their household income is $60,000, which is about half of that from U.S. born Chinese people. But it's almost the same as the median citywide for just everybody, period. So even the Chinese immigrants, they're not too far behind financially than just the average New York resident, but they're way behind their other Chinese counterparts. Crazy how quickly they can come up. And look, they're keeping the money within themselves. They got their own businesses. They're telling them, don't go big. The government come right over here. We're going to give you some under the table jobs. They probably set them up with some fake green cards. We see the cartels, the Mexican cartels out there, and broad daylight selling fake green cards, but that's a different story too. So they're going to get these people set up. Meanwhile, I was just talking about the Africans. I was talking about the Latino illegal immigrants, and they're facing budget cuts. Looks like Eric Adams is sick and tired of them. We already see him talking about he needs to deport a lot of them, especially the Venezuelan. He really wants to get them the hell out of the city. So he pushed these draconian measures, talking about he was going to do 3 rounds of budget cuts, 5% budget cuts, to total 10%. Citywide, police, teachers, the schools, the garbage collectors, parks, the rat catchers. He was going to cut everybody's budget so he can have more money for illegal immigrants. But he just told New Yorkers, look, y'all should feel relieved because I cut the city budget twice, but I'm going to pause on the third time. I'm not going to cut the budget the third time. So congratulations. I'm going to save you guys some money. I'm going to cut the illegal immigrants budget instead. So they're bragging. Eric Adams is receiving a lot of praise in New York because they were able to take control of the budget on paper anyway. And I'm going to get to that shortly. But basically what happened is they passed these measures to kick out illegal immigrants within 30 to 60 days. So if you're an illegal immigrant coming to one of these shelters, ask for freebies, food, having your dirty drawers washed. If you're single, you got 30 days to get the hell out. If you have a family, little kids, you come over with your anchor babies, you have 60 days to get the hell out. So not only are they going to save on hotel costs and shelter costs, wherever the hell else they're putting these people to sleep, they're going to save money on the housing itself, but then they're also going to save money on food, laundry services, whatever else they need to upkeep these people while they live in the shelter. And on top of that, they're going to have to hire less staff because you're going to have less people in these shelters. So that combined with the hiring freeze, they did a citywide hiring freeze and other citywide budget cuts. You combine all of that, and they were able to take control of their budget. We do have the situation with him giving out these debit cards, $1,000 a month, up to $1,000 a month for a family of 4 of illegal immigrants. But looks like they're about to run an investigation on Eric Adams on that, because it looks like he might be buddy with the owner of the company he hired to manage that debit card money. So they kicked these people out of the shelter. They allegedly received more tax revenue than expected. They didn't go into details. They just said we received more tax revenue than we thought we would. And like I said, they slashed the budget citywide. So yeah, I guess they got a little bit more money. He's not going to go down to DC again anytime soon anyways, begging for money, even though he never got any to begin with. So let's look at this clip of Eric Adams talking about the budget cuts for the illegal immigrants.
That major news from the New York City mayor's office. An exclusive interview. Mayor Eric Adams reveals he's cutting city spending on the migrant crisis by an additional 10% on top of the 20% in cuts he had already announced.
Yeah, and he says all of those citywide budget cuts have now been canceled. Our NJ Burkett sat down with the mayor this morning for that exclusive interview. He joins us now from City Hall. NJ.
That's right. Migrants will mean more money for city services. Yes, Mayor Adams says he is slashing funding for asylum seekers and counting on better than expected tax revenue. City agencies got the call about an hour ago that another round of drastic cutbacks to city services will not happen.
You're not going to see some of those draconian steps that we were going to have to take that's getting in the way of the cleanliness and the safety of our city.
So you say it's good news?
It's great news.
Mayor Adams says New Yorkers should feel relieved. After 2 rounds of punishing budget cuts to all but the most essential city services, the budget is stabilizing, and a planned 3rd round will no longer be necessary.
What does it mean for New Yorkers? How should people look at this, Mayor?
Well, if we had to do the 3rd rounds, it would impact garbage pickup. It would impact services to our older adults. It would impact libraries. It would impact a series of services that you would actually see the difference.
In an exclusive Eyewitness News interview, Mayor Adams announced that funding for asylum seekers will be cut back by 10% on top of a previous 20% cut, for nearly 1/3 cut back on city spending for migrants.
When we inherited this, we were in an emergency state. Emergency conditions cost more money. We're now transitioning into a stabilized state because this is going to be here for a while. So by doing that, we can renegotiate contracts. We can look at long-term planning. We're not using this as an emergency. Although we're in a crisis status, we're treating it differently because the emergency still exists, but we are managing it differently.
Adams says the city's economic recovery will bring in better than expected tax revenue. The announcement comes one day after the administration was praised by the independent credit rating agency Moody's for its handling of the city's budget crisis.
We are far from out of the woods, but we're showing that we can manage this crisis if we watch how we spend and we manage the spending that we're seeing in the city.
Well, the mayor says the cutbacks to migrant spending will take place in the coming weeks. We'll have much more from my interview with Mayor Adams and reaction.
Like I said, he's getting all this praise. Oh, you did a good job. You handled this budget crisis. A budget crisis you created by opening the doors to these illegal immigrants to begin with, and by mismanaging funds, overspending on illegal immigrants, stuff that you didn't have to buy, but you spent all this money, and now all of a sudden you get praised for taking control of the budget. You jumped out of a hole that you dug for yourself, and all of a sudden you get a pat on the back. All he's saying here, by the way, New Yorkers, all he's saying is he cut the budget twice and he's not going to cut it a 3rd time. So there's supposed to be some good news. Bro, you spent billions of dollars of these people's money already. So they're supposed to be happy that you're not going to spend as much as you were spending, because you're still going to continue spending. So this might all look good on paper. But what happens when the weather warms up? Because we're just coming out of winter, and always in winter the influx of migrants slows down. So what happens as the weather warms up, as these caravans start to come, these large caravans, is the influx of illegal immigrants grows and they start overwhelming the city even more. What happens when the left-wing mob, the left-wing mob, they've been distracted by a lot of things like the Gaza situation and other issues, but when they find out that Eric Adams is kicking these people out, kicking families out, oh, we got the little kids here, we brought kids with us, our anchor babies. Eric Adams has been kicking these people out after 2 months. What happens when the left-wing mob find out about that and they start marching and start demanding that Eric Adams spend more money on them? What happens when the city realizes that this dumbass debit card plan is funding gangs, and other people are just selling it for cash. And these people are still hungry. They're going to be going back to the shelters. They're going to be asking for food because this money for food that you're giving them is going to be funding gangs and stuff. What happens to your budget then? As the city becomes even more overwhelmed with crime, we got the super gangs. You have to send a National Guard down there just to help with crime. You got the National Guard policing everyday citizens in New York because of the crime explosion. What happens as this crime explodes even more? Your police are overwhelmed. You can't handle it. What's going to happen to your budget then? So we'll see, because he might have done some things, him and his people, they did some things on paper that made it look like they can balance the budget. But we have these anomalies. We got so many variables, so many things that could go wrong to make the budget go haywire. I guess good luck, New Yorkers, or as Eric Adams says, y'all should be relieved. Y'all New Yorkers should be relieved. They stole billions of dollars from your tax money and just gave it away. Gave it away to illegal immigrants, gave it away to street gangs, gave it away to Venezuelan gangsters. And they're saying, oh yeah, be relieved because we stole your money and gave it away, but we're not giving away as much as we used to. So let me know what you guys think about this. Leave me your thoughts below. Share the video. Thanks for watching.